On this episode of ResiWeek, we wrap up IBS and KBIS 2025, talk about investing in integrators, and Josh's winter event. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 475, Technology Champions. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by three of my good friends. First, we've got Arlen. He is the editor-in-chief over at CE Pro. How you doing, Arlen?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me back as always.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have Mr. Paul Williams from NICE. He is the Managing Director of Home Technology. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing fantastic, Matt. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for being here. And then last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Alex Capecelatro. He is the CEO over at Josh.ai. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Thank you all for being here. We are going to kick this right off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro, IBIS and KBIS 2025, a recap on the smart home design build momentum. Go read through the article from Lisa Montgomery. She covers a quick overview of IBIS and KBIS, as well as focuses on a couple of smart home tech companies that were there and what they were doing there. Paul, let me start with you on this. We are seeing more and more smart home companies exhibiting at this show, and they're working on building partnerships with home builders and contractors. What does that look like, and what is driving that direct connection approach?
Well, it starts with the purchaser behavior. So as we see the home buyers are looking at their new homes that are being built, and they are expecting a level of technology in those homes to begin with as it's delivered from the builder. And so you've got these builders who have been building homes for decades, are suddenly faced with this dilemma is like, okay, what do I need to put in these homes in order for them to sell, in order to tick the box that I've got a smart home and or I have a connected home, whatever vernacular they want to use. And so then the builders are looking for solutions. Some of them tried early on with some of these technologies and were bit. What they found is I hand the house over to the consumer, and the consumer is now calling me every day to find out why stuff isn't working in the house. And so some of them are gun shy. And so we've got the re-entrance back into the markets that you see people coming back around, some of these older builders. And you've got new builders that are, of the younger generation. They're coming in here and they're going, hey, it just needs to have smart home, and I'm willing to figure out what I need to do to make it all work correctly. And so you've got both these dynamics that are at play. And what that spells for manufacturers is an opportunity, because these builders are looking for solutions that they can put into these homes that they're building.
Alex, when you hear, when you read what Lisa wrote about, and we'll pick on Sonos just for a second, and you hear what Paul said about builders looking for those connections, looking for that technology and trying to find a way to do that, is there an avenue for companies, and potentially even a company like yours, to not only try and build that relationship with a builder, but also try and foster a relationship between that builder and one of your integrators? How do you balance that? Or can you balance that?
It's a great question, partly because my answer is yes and no. We have attended the show many times. We've worked with builders, sometimes successfully, sometimes less successfully. And it's very builder dependent. It's very much a matter of the region and are they working closely with an integrator or not. When we go to the show, I am often frustrated, and this is as a, with my Josh.ai hat on, I'm often frustrated that it feels like they're not wanting technology. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to hear about it. They've got a lot of stuff they're dealing with on the builder side. When I look at what Sonos is doing, I think it's brilliant. And I think it's brilliant because it's a single purpose product. Music, a builder can wrap their head around it. When you get more complicated, full home automation, that's where I think it's a real struggle with the way that conversations at the show goes. I will tell you, though, we had team members at the show, not exhibiting, but just taking meetings. And they had some really good meetings with builders that want to lean into this. They want to put full lighting, full HVAC, full security. Like, there's a lot of momentum moving in this direction. It's just not the average conversation on the show floor. These are the private conversations in a suite, in the back room. People are like, don't tell anyone, but I'm, actually using technology. It's almost like they don't want to admit it. And so I think it's good for manufacturers to go to the show, to talk to builders, to try to figure this out. But I've not found it to be beneficial to exhibit unless you have a single purpose product like a camera, like a door lock, like a speaker.
Yeah.
And if you take that approach, I do think it can work.
Do you think, just before we go to Arlen, do you think that is mainly because it's not a long show, but it's not a incredibly short show, but their time is limited, and they've got all these other foundational things that they have to look at?
I don't think so. I think it's just too outside of what they think about day to day.
Okay.
They're building entire structures. There's a lot that goes into, we've got subcontractors for electrical, and we've got HVAC, and we've got pool. We've got all these different areas that we have to understand. I don't think they want to know technology at a level that a technology integrator does. And that's where I think the opportunity to work together comes in. Most of the folks I talk to at the show, they're kind of like, look, we're going to build the house and you guys do that stuff after we leave. We don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of the mindset I hear from people walking around. I will tell you, though, when we talk to certain builders one-on-one outside of the show, they're not all thinking that way.
Right.
Many of them are thinking, we want to build a fully move-in ready home that has everything equipped. For some reason, the show doesn't seem to resonate with those people from what I've seen. But I'm curious if Arlen or Paul might have heard different or seen different.
Yeah, I've been there the last, well, not the last 2 years, but the 2 years prior to that. And I know Matt wanted to ask me about whether, I think integrators should go to this if it is a show of theirs. And what I saw of those two shows that I went to is that there is a lot of room for growth on the builder side. And, what I do want to point out is that there's also, in addition to IBS, as Matt said, there's KBIS, the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show. And that one's all about designers, really. So, I do think there are opportunities for those relationships, those networking opportunities. But like you say, Alex, it's beyond beyond the booths, though, right? I think it's with, if you're sitting maybe you're sitting in on an education session, maybe you're talking to the person sitting next to you. For integrators, I think there's a very good opportunity for them to be part of the education, especially at KBIS, where they could speak directly to the designers. They've had involvement. They have a panel pretty much every year on smart technology. I know there's been some traction. I've been to a couple of the editorial advisory board meetings of KBB, Kitchen and Bath Business Magazine, that Emerald puts out. And I know the editor-in-chief there, she really values the opinions of the designers who are in on that meeting. And my impression is that that was something that they want. I think they know that their clients, it's something that they can afford and something that they're pretty interested in. So I think getting those relationships, I was just at Integrator. They're profiled in the March issue of CE Pro, Sound Vision, down near the Charlotte area of North Carolina. And they host as many lunch and learns as they can with designers and builders. And they've managed to create amazing relationships through doing those events. So I definitely think there are ways in which integrators can really ingratiate themselves more in those communities. I know people like Josh Christian of the HTA. He goes there, I think, just about every year to keep that open-mindedness and having that, sharing of insights between the attendees.
I gave my perspective from the Josh.ai side of things, and I agree a lot with what Arlen said. I do want to disclose I'm also the chair for CEDIA, and I think the CEDIA perspective is very different. Daryl, CEDIA's CEO, was there this year. He was speaking. He was on stage. I think CEDIA needs to be there, making that community aware that we exist, trying to build these bridges, and letting builders know you should partner with integrators early and often and not build everything disregarding technology. And then we have to have these fights later down the road. So I do think for trade partners, HTA, CEDIA, buying groups, like there's a real benefit to being there. I think if I were an integrator or in my seat right now as a manufacturer, that's where it's a little bit of a different feeling because it's not yet where it needs to get to. But CEDIA's mindset is very much, we need to create a common vocabulary and a common mission, so builders look at us as helping them, not competing with them.
I was just going to add in, so I'll echo a couple of points there. So on Alex's point, I do believe it's a show that integrators should attend, and we see integrators there as we attend the show. We talk to a lot of the folks that are there, and I think it's helpful to understand how builders are thinking and how they're working, because, and I know most of them are working with builders anyway, but to think about how the rest of the industry is focused and what they have to think about. But the bigger part of this is, and as Alex was mentioning, this isn't the place where you're probably going to, as an integrator, you're going to meet this builder and you're going to go, wow, I got this big builder project that's going to happen. It's going to happen from the direct relationship you have to foster with those builders in your local area. Yeah. You're going to have to go to them. And the big folks like Pulte and Lennar and all those guys, they do business a little differently. And then we have some integrators that have tried to get their noses plugged in there. And those are big entities.
It's a different game.
And they have a whole set of needs that you have to be just careful about what you're doing. I would start, if you're not doing builder work today, and you're working with builders anyway because of a project, you have a person that's got that builder and you bring their builder along with you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, I'm working with a builder. They're building 10 homes this year. I'm going to be in all 10. Or I'm working with a builder and they're building 5,000 tract homes. I'm going to be in all 5,000 tract homes. That's the kind of projects we're talking about. Start small, get your regional builders, go talk about what you do, introduce yourself. I do agree with CEDIA getting involved to educate the builders about this ecosystem that exists out there. And while they may have to interact with some of those, they may not understand the scope, scale, and the opportunity of working with those folks. And then the other part of that is that partnerships are a big part of what we see at those shows. We are a HomeSphere partner as well. That was also mentioned in the article. Mm-hmm. And we were in the Sonos booth. We were part of one of the partners that's working with them as well. So we leverage those partnerships so that, Sonos has a little bit bigger name than we have today. We're pulling along, and there's the cart behind them as well on some of those things.
I love it.
Builder is an important part of our business and growing part of our business today.
Yeah, that's a good point. Arlen, just before we move on, how long till we see somebody like Daisy have a booth at KBIS or IBS?
I think for them, it'll be a natural fit. If you're talking about a company that's that big and can afford a booth and afford the time to have people staff it there, I think that probably seems like a natural fit, Matt. You might be giving them an idea with that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. All right, let's change topics for a second. This comes to us from Residential Systems, adapting to change, how institutional investment is shaping the luxury home service industry. If you have not read this, go read this. It's a great article, kind of stemming from a episode that they did on the Flywheel podcast, offering insights on how to adapt and compete in a changing market. If you have not been paying attention to investment in home services, this has been the recent kind of hot button thing that investors are looking at. They're buying up multiple mom and pop shops in home services and essentially trying to turn them into conglomerates that are doing multiple things. We haven't seen a lot of it yet in our industry, but it is coming. Arlen, let me start with you. How could this potentially change the landscape of home technology if we start to see significant investors come in and, take up a bunch of, again, for lack of a better term, mom and pop shops in a region or in an area? What is that going to do?
Matt, I think you might be seeing it look more like the security landscape is now, where you do have those kind of big regional players. In addition to, you still have the mom and pops, you still have kind of the medium-sized businesses, but you have the regional and national players. So when you're looking at the VC money, and we're taking, obviously the first thing that's coming to mind is Daisy, because we see and we read news about their rounds of funding. They're scooping up some really big name integrators. They're going to be all over the place. So we know what they're looking at national, but we know other integrators are kind of moving to that, security industry where there's lots of mergers and acquisitions. And, we've started to see that a lot in the last 3 years. I know we've talked about that on the show before. And I think those, will be that opportunity to have that on a, larger scale, larger footprint area for those kind of companies. And of course, we know, I profiled Daisy last year. I talked to Hagen Kapler, their president, CEO, and she comes from that home services background. She came from like the Merry Maids and running that business and figuring it out. So, when you look at her background and just seeing that success, if it's something that they do well, and I think others in the VC industry start thinking, yeah, we can replicate that. I think it's definitely something that they've seen work in the security industry, and they can see probably, just basically continuing that line into the home integration market.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Alex, when you kind of follow this, um, is this long term going to be better for the home technology professional, the people that work in that channel, like us, or could this be potentially better for the end users, for the customers?
My first thought is really, will this even work? We've seen roll-ups for years, Via and all the other ones, and now we've got what Brava's been up to, and High Solutions and Daisy, and this is not guaranteed to succeed. I think Daisy is showing good progress. I don't know what the underlying economics and financials are looking like, and so the first thing I think about is, this isn't the first time. This hasn't really taken off yet. And if this doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't matter if it's better, because it might not even succeed. If it does succeed, I think one of the benefits is, I talk to clients all the time who live in multiple places. And as a manufacturer, they often come to me and say, I don't want to work with John Smith over here and Kevin Smith over there. And, there's no consistency. They're like, can we just work with you as the manufacturer and have you kind of service all of our locations? And we've made it clear, no, we work with integrators. They serve a huge value. We train them, they're partners. Like, this is the best way for you to move. If we could work more with certain partners that cover the locations that clients have multiple homes in, it gives a client that one point of contact, the one place to get billed from. I think that's a benefit. I don't know ultimately how that will compare price wise. There's always this talk about, we can streamline efficiencies and we can have a smaller back office support more locations. And so if someone's able to get their home service for less money, that's a good thing for the customer. I don't know if that's the way it would actually end up, though. So we kind of have to wait and see. The last comment I'll make is, I think for this to work, there needs to be real consistency in products, consistency in training, consistency in pricing. And I have yet to see one of these roll-ups take that approach. Every market charges different. They install different products, or people are trained differently. And it just feels like it's not really any better than working with a local integrator, because you're already dealing with a one-off shop. An example I'll give is, I'm in California. I work with an integrator that's in multiple locations. Every region that I talk to, it's like its own little business. They have their own inventory. They carry different products. They have their own, pros and cons, in terms of how they work. And I wish it were more unified, because I have a home in two of their locations. It's not that way. So, will this be good for the customer? It might be. I'm not sure it's going to get there.
Paul, when you follow this, I really kind of lean into the HVAC model, because that seems to be the one that has happened the most that I've seen when I've been following this type of story. Right? They come in, they buy one company in a region, and they buy all the other small shops that are in that same region. It's not always like a multi-state situation, right? They come in and take over a small geographical footprint, and they become the big boys. The pushback that customers seem to have is, do they love getting the automated text messages with the pictures of the technician who's coming to their house? Do they love when it's the nice big truck and they've got all the drop claws and they've got all the stuff, but then they don't like the $1,200 bill to replace a faucet? How does this potentially help or hurt our channel?
So I think there's a lot in that. I think the first thing is, is that the model that in our industry that'll get followed? Will we see people go into LA and want to take over all of LA, and so suddenly you've got one massive integrator, VC funded kind of integrator that's in that territory. I'm not sure that that's the way it would go down in this industry, because I think we're dealing with a little bit of some idiosyncrasy in two things. One, the scale and scope. Every house needs HVAC. Not every house needs what we do. That's one thing that goes along with that. So I think that will become somewhat self-limiting as far as how big these conglomerates can get in the first place, because there's limited customer base. Flip side of that, though, is that the benefit for that perspective may be educating the consumer about what is possible. Because one of the things that we said, like 2+ decades ago, one of the things we were looking forward to, and DIY smart home didn't exist. When DIY came along, then suddenly it was like, you guys are going to die. DIY is going to take over everything. This integrator channel is going away. It's going to go completely gone with DIY. And the reality, what it did is it raised the tide, because it did get awareness out there. And for some consumers, like, I'm not putting that stuff in myself, but is there somebody that can? And they went, oh, well, here's an integrator that does those very things. So I look at the money that's being put in there to create these conglomerates could generate more buzz and more attention that actually helps the smaller integrator in being able to be that service client. I can go, hey, I'm a one-touch. I get in there. I'm your person. I'm your technology champion. And so it makes it better for the integrator. And I think that will still make it good for the consumer from that perspective of getting a great experience that's there. Do I think that will become what you're seeing in some of these other subsidiary kind of channels like HVAC, somewhat in electrical as well? I don't think it's that, because once again, this isn't something that you have to have in your home. It's a want to have.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, let's hit our last topic of the day really quickly. This comes to us from a Residential Tech Today. The Josh.ai winter launch event packed quite a punch. Go read through this article from Rob Stote. He covers the gist of the winter launch event. Alex, I trust he didn't leave anything out. But essentially, there's a bunch of new improvements, a bunch of new expanded partnerships, etc., an update to the Josh GTP, some door link stuff, a whole bunch of other cool things. Alex, let me start with you on this for anybody who hasn't read it or hasn't followed it. You guys introduced a bunch of new integrations and partnerships, etc. How do you go about kind of determining which new products, which new integrations you add as you continue to build out this product portfolio? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's a very complicated set of factors. The first one is we frequently talk to dealers, get feedback, do surveys, and we have a clear sense of what the number 1, 2, and 3 requests are, all the way down to number 99, 100, 101. There's an ever-growing list of things people want. We then couple that with how doable are some of these requests. As I see Paul kind of nodding, sometimes dealers want something, but it's not doable for a variety of reasons. And so, practicality is a big one. And then what we start to look at is what direction are dealers going, and what direction are we able to kind of move them? And so one of the announcements that we launched was Blue Sound with Blue OS. Mm-hmm. This is one where people can work with Sonos, they can work with Autonomic, they can work with Hios. There are all these different options. But people kept bringing this up, and we kind of kept trying to untangle what are the reasons, what's the thread, what is it that people are ultimately looking for, and ultimately that became one of the right ones to do based on dealers were very passionate about it, reps were very passionate about it. They're actively deploying these in projects. It's a great company to work with. All the technical API needs existed. And we also felt like this allows us to offer a more premium offering where, some of the easier integrations might be more of the consumer products, but dealers often are looking for more of a professional line of product in the markets that we deal with. So for us, there's really a pretty complicated matrix of things. Sometimes we get a request for something that it's not the biggest demand, but it's really easy to do, and there are enough people who want it that we'll just go and do it because it gets, a couple of people happy. In other cases, though, like some of the AI features, dealers aren't asking for it. They don't know to ask for it, but we know that this can take things to the next level. So one of those examples is what we announced with what we call Door Link. And so in this case, someone rings the doorbell. We use our AI to analyze what it sees at the door, and it announces in pretty much real time over whatever speakers you want what it sees. So it says, oh, I see two people at the door. They appear to be in their 40s. One is male, one's female. They're holding a box. Do you want me to let them in? Like, the idea is no dealers requesting that feature because they don't know that that's an option. But we know that we work with really good doorbell integration hardware companies, and we've got the AI and the software to facilitate that. So a lot of what we announced was either dealer requested partnerships or features and products that we think will take things to the next level.
Yeah, very, very cool. Paul, when you follow this and what you guys are doing over at NICE, Alex mentioned the AI aspect of it. You guys are also putting AI into a lot of your products. How do you go about figuring out the effective uses of AI and not just using it as a tagline?
Along the same lines that Alex was talking about. So first of all, we do a lot of research. We talk to not just dealers, because dealers sometimes are one step removed. I mean, that sounds kind of harsh, but sometimes they don't understand exactly how that home is going to be used at the end of the day. They set it up best they can, they leave. And if we talk to consumers, we actually get to understand a little bit about how they're living in that space. Okay, so what are the big challenges that you see in your day-to-day life? What are the things that we could use AI to be able to solve a challenge for you, or to make something easier for you, or to make you feel more comfortable, or to make it so that you feel more safe and secure, to give you peace of mind? Those are the types of things we're looking at. And then we look at how could AI solve those problems for the consumer. And honestly, they may not understand that there could be a solution. They just know they have a problem. And so we're looking to solve that problem. And we'll ask dealers too. Dealers do have some insight that goes into that. But we do our research. We get to understand that. Then when it comes to, what are consumers interacting with, like Alex and others, we have on the back end, we can see what's being interacted with in our systems. And so we go, hey, here's the top things that are continually getting interacted. Well, can we automate any of that? Is there some things that we could do with AI that would make that a better solution for the consumer? And if so, what would it be? And what's something that we could do that would add some magic, so to speak, to this solution and make it impressive?
Yeah, I love it. All right, Arlen, wrap this up for me. This was a big announcement. Lots of companies do big announcements. How do dealers leverage something like this, right? Alex and his team just put out, again, a long list of updates. Should dealers be paying attention to this, not only for themselves, but also as an opportunity to reach out to existing clients and say, hey, your platform just did all of these new things. We can come back and help you institute some of these things or expand to take advantage. How do they do that?
I mean, anytime that they get an opportunity to have just another touch point with their client, I think is great. Like you said, I think the first thing they can do is, if they have an email list that they can blast out to all of their customers with Josh, they can do that for the first thing. I think it gives them an opportunity when they have events, if they have some sort of basically like, hey, come to our, event where we're going to show you all of these new Josh, basically activities, triggers that you can do, scenes that you can create, all of that stuff. Bring the integrators into, bring the clients into a showroom all at once and say, maybe 10 to 15 clients or so that are already existing customers, and say, okay, look at this, look at this, look at this. Do we show you this? Because I also think that's a good chance. I know companies like Josh really want to hear from dealers about their feedback with products, but I think especially with a product like this that's very, cutting edge and adding different functionalities all the time, I think it would be good for the dealer to talk to their customers and interview them and say, hey, you've been living with this now for how long? Here's what's coming out. What's missing. Obviously, like Alex said, that they're not sure about the AI capabilities, but customers can throw out anything these days, and who knows if it can be done. They're not sure. So I think it's a good point to reach back out. And I think events like that, certainly, social communications, showing little video clips, maybe dealers can do that and say, come to our YouTube page, come to our showroom when after you've seen this stuff in action and see how it would work in your own home.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, gentlemen, let's leave it there. Thank you all for joining us. Arlen, if people want to connect with you, learn more about CE Pro, where can they do that?
Sure, they can go to cepro.com, and then we're available on all the usual social channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Instagram now as well. And then personally, you can find me at LinkedIn, just at Arlen Schweiger.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Mr. Williams, thank you. If people want to connect with you, learn more about NICE, where can they do that?
So it's real easy. Niceforyou.com, all spelled out, nice, FORYOU.com. They can learn all about the solutions and technologies that we have. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm easily reachable on LinkedIn and even paul.williams@niceforyou.com.
Excellent. An actual email. Look at that. Alex, my friend, if people want to connect with you, watch that winter event, replay, or learn more about Josh.ai, where can they do that?
It's all up on the website, www.josh.ai. Feel free to reach out. You can find our socials there, and love to be in touch.
Excellent. Thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on most social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of our other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.